Happy Saturday, everybody. Welcome back into Venting with Us with your girl, Christelle. I hope you guys had an exciting week, a good week, okay week. I just hope it wasn't, it's still cold as hell. My hands are freezing and I am refusing to put the heat on in my house. I'm not doing it. Nope. Nope. I'm not doing it. But we are too close. We are getting close. Um, so I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I have been pumping out videos like non-stop. Well, you see the premieres on there. They're not released fully yet, but I have had this bug inside of me where work has really taken over. And now that I have time, because I'm not really doing too much right now, it's like, why not, take advantage of this time that I have because I don't know like what my energy is going to be like and whatnot. And it's kind of been like if the stars are lining up, I have no idea because I normally do like one episode every week and then I keep my life going. And between the last couple of days, I've been just pushing out all different ones and it's crazy. But I love it because I'm stumbling upon all of these great documentaries and my thing is that when these things happen and I find a great documentary for you guys, my brain is already working on how I'm going to talk about it on the show, what direction we're going to go on it and we're going to move forward from it. So that's what's been happening. Even like last night, I came upon the boy bands era on the ID channel, and they were in sync and all of this stuff. That one was a really good one. I don't know if I'm going to get to that one yet, but we'll see. We'll see. Lou Pearlman was disgusting, though. He was just such a freaking disgusting guy. If you guys get a chance to watch it, it is on the ID channel. But I could not wait. As I told you guys last week, we were going to talk about Hollywood demons. And this episode goes into what people would do to become famous or to have that 2 minute, oh, my left ear is ringing. Now, they say the left ear, that means someone's going to call you, and the right ear, someone is talking about you. But lately, I've been reading, I'm so confused because they say the right ear is good and it's good, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And the left ear is the bad one. So I'm going to have to Google this again. I'm sorry, guys. But anyways, so I told you guys I was going to do this episode because people will do anything for fame, right? And sometimes everything is not what it seems. And so, for instance, people always have this dream of being in the limelight and having people, know who they are. And then once they get into the limelight, now they're being stalked. So now they don't have privacy. They don't have all of these things. And we've spoken about this. It's I always say if you want to be famous, that's perfectly fine. To each his own, right? But where there is fame, there are things that come with it. It's kind of like starting a new job. You go in for a position, but the next thing you know, you're doing like three other jobs. That's just the way it goes. Um, and it's the same thing with fame. People cannot handle it once they're actually in it. I always say things always have a way of working out in people's lives. And sometimes it's tragedy, unfortunately, and sometimes it's a blessing because, you hear about those people that win the lotto, right? Well, I'm one of those that wants to win the lotto. Trust me, I want to win the lotto so bad. And some people are just like when they get the lotto, they go crazy and they can't handle the amount of money that they've come into. And then they have people trying to kill them for the money and because they went on TV and it's just crazy. And some people, they end up really doing well in their life and living a long lasting life because they don't let the money eat at them. So when it comes to television, people think that it's all glitz and glamour and whatnot, and they want to be known and they want to, and they're getting all this money when they're going on these talk shows and really letting themselves out. But they're not understanding that there's consequences. When you go on a talk show and you're exposing some of your deep, darkest secrets to people, you have to remember that you have to go back home. You're going back to a town, whether if it's city life or if it's a small life, you're going to be recognized, right? And I remember when the Jerry Springer show came out, um, talk shows were not the way they are now. I kind of feel like with the talk shows that are out now, it's never going to hit the same like it did. Now, for instance, you had the Maury show, which I'm sorry, after a while with the even with the Maury, I don't know if that show is still on, but the lie detector test, we can only do this episode like so many times before it gets boring. You had Maury, you had the Montel Williams show, you had the Ricky Lake show, you had Sally Jesse Raphael, you had the Steve Wilkos show, the Jenny Jones show, Dr. Phil. You had all of these shows that were competing with what was happening. And I remember there was one at one time where there was just so many talk shows on. And you also had Oprah at the time too. And Oprah was like number one, like Queen O, right? So you had so many that you could like it was like watching like a soap opera, like which soap opera, like General Hospital, One Life to Live, Days of Our Lives. You had so many, like it was just crazy at one point. When the Jerry Springer show came about, it was a little bit different, but it was more close to when it started, like the Jenny Jones show and Oprah, where they would talk about serious topics. And, you know, the thing with talk shows is, and just like a podcast show, for example, you have to figure out what's going to make you different, what's going to separate you from the bunch, right? And that's what Jerry did. For instance, I'm going to give you some of the topics of what was on his shows. Stealing my friend's wife, dumping my high school girlfriend online, I'm coming out. Surprise, I have a surprise secret for you. That's the one that got them in trouble. We'll talk about that today. Fighting over a trick, scandalous stories of seduction. I slept with my sister and now she's pregnant. Relationships in the gutter. Stuff like this is what nobody was doing. None of the talk shows, they wanted to kind of follow in the lead of more of Oprah and really get down to the nitty-gritty and kind of be kind of that therapy. And some of us, and I'm guilty of it, because in the beginning I did love Jerry. When that show started and all you heard was Jerry, 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 you knew like it was going to be a good one, especially with the topics and whatnot. And it was so good and so juicy. And you were waiting for people to fight and you were waiting to see who was going to leave with who. You didn't think about anything else because you're watching it from the TV, right? Or you go to the show and you're just there for the theatrics. But the show itself, it exploited allegations of abuse, incest, molestation, even on death, a death not shown on air, but there was controversies of people dying after they left the show. It does follow associate producer Houston Curtis, and he goes more into details of what they would do with if you were a guest on the show. So the behind the scenes, and that's what we really wanted to know, like what actually happens when you get into that green room, right? What are the expectations? So what is crazy about this is that depending on what the show was, one, it's so funny because their first guest is a 14-year-old girl And she talks about how it destroyed her life. Her dad was a part of the KKK, and they they went on the show. They were paying the dad $1,000 every time. He was a guest 3 times until he finally got kicked out. But they hated Jews, and they showed her clips. And she starts crying. She's mortified of what she says, and she's like, you guys don't understand that I was young at that time, and going on a show and expressing my religion, and just going into full details of how I felt and how I hated Jew people, knowing that Jerry Springer's family was Holocaust survivors, and he was really angry in some of those episodes. But you can see how they encourage, though, the audience to be so just vile to people. And that's where it shifts, because people are saying now, like, oh, I hate you, and how could you do that? By all means, yeah, they're in the KKK. I'm not supporting that at all. But there is still a way to talk to people. Unfortunately, we end up finding out later on that her father was abusive and he was sexually molesting her. He ends up going to jail, but the damage is done at that point. Her view on everything, she's like, I was so brainwashed by my dad. And after her parents had split, he had full custody of her. It was just a lot of brainwashing. You don't understand that when you're a child, as you get older, you have different views. But you hear that a lot, especially when it comes to religion. Your parents can force you and take you to church 7 days a week and put Bible in front of you as a child. And you start to resent it a little bit, and you're like, oh, I don't want to do this. Blah, blah, blah. You start to rebel. And then when you get older is when you start to kind of appreciate a little bit more, and you're kind of figuring out, do I, do I want to stay in this religion, or do I want to change my religion? There's been statistics that show that a lot of the kids end up changing their religion, and going into a different religion, to continue to, prosper in life. So that was like an example of what, they would do. But they would encourage the kids to speak out. At one point, she got a little crazy because she did the Hitler thing. And I was like, oh my God. Like, but the producers would antagonize the guests. They would tell the guests, and they say this in the documentary. Again, if you want to watch this, it's Hollywood Demons, and you can find it on the ID channel. It's in the second season. It's the first episode of the second season. But they tell you that, and by the way, one of the producers came out. They were like, "No, we never paid the guests," and the girl was like, "No, they paid the guests." And all the guests that they actually end up speaking to, they do pay them. So that was a complete lie. I guess that they fumbled there. But what they would also do with the guests is, for instance, like if they were going on the show and they were confronting the other person, what they would do is they would tell one of the guests, you should spit on them. You should like argue back and forth with them. What you should do is, if you go for a handshake, the security guards will not go in, because they think that you're trying to, kind of be friendly with them. But then what you're going to do is you're going to take their hands and then you're going to slug them in the face. And they would get away with this stuff. This is crazy. And this is what would get their show going. It's so crazy what they would do, making sure that the show was more entertainable, to be able to get them to fight and argue and be violent. And the more that they can antagonize the guests, more that they can get them to be more violent on the show, the ratings were higher and higher and higher. You had a few of the people did come out and say sexual assault was like a thing on on that show. Like sometimes some of the producers that used to work there, they have guests, they fly in and they would get into the green room and they would be like, you know what? I don't know if this is for me. I don't know. I don't know if I can go out there and be on TV. And then they would set, and especially if it was a guy guest that was coming on to the show, which I found this part a little bit disgusting because how far is too far? Like, sometimes we have to kind of draw the line, but to each his own, I guess. I don't know. Um, but one of the female producers would actually go in and convince the guests, especially if they were guys, mind you, they're the only guys, to go on the show by unbuttoning and flashing him and being sexually and with the guest in order to convince them to be on the show. There are they were briefly discussing how it was one incident where one of the producers didn't want to do something and they taped her down to her chair. Like that's serious like work abuse. And what I didn't like was Jerry Springer, he's in the documentary, and he's talking about, he never knew what who the guests were going to be, what the topics were going to be, because he wanted to have the same reaction that we were all getting, whether if you were watching it from TV or if you were in the audience, right? And he's like, I didn't know what was happening back there. All I knew was when I got on there, I'm finding out just like everybody else. But I had always said to the producers that if you could work for the Jerry Springer show, you could work anywhere because this would have been a piece of cake compared to working in other establishments, which is kind of really scary when you think about that because Hollywood alone has already that reputation of pedophiles and being abused on sets and being, not working in great environments over there. I have said this many, many, many times. I truly, truly believe that every time I was supposed to go to LA, that God, for me, spiritually, God would stop it and intervene it. Because it was weird every single time. Like there was just always that was something happening that would not let me go to Hollywood. And I could never understand that because I really wanted to go to LA. Like I had an apartment down and everything. I was gonna move my grandmother out there. And for whatever reason, it just things just kept on coming up where it wouldn't work out. And that was the crazy thing for me. So I never understood. And now I kind of understand it now, knowing what I know. But it's scary when you actually hear it from big celebrities, and he even says it, there's times where people like they love that limelight, but they don't really understand the consequences that come with it, the package deal. You're kind of seeing it for what it's being sold for, but once you open it, it's kind of a nightmare. Um, the other tragedy that came upon this was, unfortunately, they had a guest that died. Now, this poor woman, I really, really felt bad because the lawyer ended up speaking for her. Um, and the way you can tell that it just really, really like just irked her because this woman was the nicest woman in the world. Her name was Nancy Campbell. I don't know if you guys remember this. You guys to go back on the show and watch this, but she was confronted by her ex-husband, Ralph, and his then wife at the time, Eleanor, who alleged that Nancy was stalking them. Now, the way they were able to get Nancy on the show, because originally she just got this random phone call and she was asked to go on the Jerry Springer show. Nancy did not want to be a part of the show. She was absolutely hands down. She said, no, 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 I don't want to be a part of this. Ralph at the time was in Germany and he had no way of being able to come into the States. So the only way that he can get into the States was that damn Ralph. See, Ralph, he didn't go to Home Depot, guys. Don't worry about that. He didn't go to Home Depot. Just in case if you think we're going there, we're not. But this story is tragic. So the only way that he would be able to get back into the States was if he tricked Nancy to getting onto the show, because then he would be able to fly in. And then from there, he was in the States. So that's exactly what happened. Nancy then agrees to come on the show. Eleanor, first of all, she's a bitch. Okay. We don't like Eleanor at all. But the producers, while Nancy is there, they're trying to work Nancy up, right? And they're telling Nancy, you really should go in on her, go in on Eleanor and tell her she's a hoe and tell her this and that. And, uh, Nancy was kind of like, okay. You know, she gets on stage and you see it, they show it. You can tell that Nancy is super uncomfortable. Okay. She does not seem like she wants to have this confrontation at all. She seems like a very humble person. Eleanor, so it's Eleanor and Nancy. They're the first two, and they bring out the guys, and the guys always are coming out pumped up, like yeah, yeah, like they always came out like that and running around. It's kind of like the dramatics of the Maury show, of like when they do the lie detector test, and he's like, and the results are in. You are not the father. He's like, I told you, bitch, I told you that was not my baby. I told you we need another lie. That's, you know what I'm talking about. That's exactly like theatrics of how like they would come out. I'm sorry, that took me a minute. Um, So Ralph comes out. So Eleanor is there and she's antagonizing Nancy, and she's like, you're a stalker. You be stalking my man. And but like now thinking about this, how the fuck are you stalking Ralph when Nancy lives in Florida and Ralph is in Germany? So I don't think people put two and two together. Like, how is she stalking? Like, there's no way to stalk from like a whole different. Like, we're not in the same spot. So Ralph comes out and he's like, right? And now he's like, I need you to leave me alone and blah blah blah. This is done. We're not ever gonna be together. You fucking dick. That's me saying that to Ralph. And Nancy does not want to participate at all. She's like, okay, that's fine. I'm done. And she does the unthinkable thing that no guests do. She gets up and she walks away. And, you know, the show ends. It doesn't end up airing until later on, but approximately 2 years later, it's on the TV. And Ralph is at a bar at this point. There had been this dispute that was going on between him and Nancy still. He ended up at some point taking over Nancy's house, kicking her out, making her homeless. She ended up having to go to court. Like a whole shit. Like, yo, you just came and ruined my whole life. Like, and you stole my house? You motherfucker. That's exactly what I said when I was watching. They're like, what? You would have been cut? Oh, it would have been a whole Home Depot run. Give me some tubes, give me everything that you need. Like, you knew shit was going down. You don't even understand, capos. Like, so she takes him to court. She ends up getting her house back. And this is where the lawyer is now discussing this, right? And fast forward, Ralph is in the bar. The episode comes on. It is the craziest thing because that same day is the same day that Nancy gets her house back, and Ralph is kicked out, forced out of the house, embarrassed, and he's drinking. Now he's in this bar where everybody's looking at this, and he goes back and he kills Nancy. He stomps on her face. They were able to match the shoe prints to her face. The cop details it in such a way. She's like, there was something on her face, and this is the first time and the only time I've ever had to do this. I took like a plastic bag and I kind of like drew out the lines and it matched the footprint. So she got stomped on. There was blood everywhere. They did a wellness check, and that was how they were able to find Nancy's body. But because of this, she ended up losing her life for no reason. She didn't want to be with this man. She didn't want to have nothing to do with this man. This man was just bitter in his life. And I remember listening to this story because it reminded me of the Jenny Jones show. And if you guys remember this, you probably don't, because this was like years ago. The same thing happens on the Jenny Jones show, and the family ended up suing the show, and they had to pay millions. But this was a big, big deal where they would do these surprise guests, and it became restricted that no talk shows could ever do them. So that's why you never saw them again. Like, surprise, someone has a secret crush on you, or surprise, I'm your secret admirer. I don't know if you remember those. That was like a thing back in the days. And after the Jenny Jones show had aired and the guy was murdered, there was a whole thing in the contracts where they were not do that. So no shows, you would never see any of these things happening. But what happened on the Jenny Jones show was that particular thing. It was a guest that came on because somebody was going to tell them that they'd had a secret crush on them for years. And the couples were Luke and Scott. And Luke was the one, he was the guy that was coming to find out who had this crush on him. And he didn't know. He thought it was his female roommate because she was there also. And it turned out to be this guy named Scott. And he was gay. Luke was so embarrassed by this, and he was super uncomfortable. And you can see it also on camera. And he's like, no, like, I don't know, go like that and whatnot. You should know better or whatever. But Lord knows what they said behind the scenes, that Luke went into a huge deranged fit and he ended up killing Scott. He murdered him. And it was the craziest thing. I remember watching back on the court case, and you can see it because Jenny actually ended up having to do that. But the same thing happened with the Jerry Springer show. They stopped doing all of these things. It was right around that time where they weren't going to do it anymore because there was too many things that were happening that were just, pushing people off the edge, which by all means, like, some of these topics were crazy. So, but I do agree that talk shows do not they're never going to be the same. They're not the same. You don't have that same je ne sais quoi to it. But listen, it made good TV. We gave it to the people, so I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Stay with me next week. I don't know what we're doing next week, but I'm sure there'll be something good. There'll be something good to talk about. But yes, if you want to watch Talk with Demons, again, it is on the ID channel. It did premiere April 20th, which was last week. What, last week? Yeah, like last week. All right. I love you guys. No, well, 2 weeks ago. You know what I mean. I love you guys. Thanks for tuning in again and again. If keep spreading the word, let us get more followers and continue making the show great. All right. Love you guys. Have a great weekend, and I will see you soon.